Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. Of course, you can follow me on Twitter at Movies TV Mad, and welcome to my review of Spider-Man No Way Home. First, here's my disclaimer about what I think about MCU Spider-Man. The first two MCU Spider-Man films are very, very underwhelming for me. They're made for children, it seems that way anyway, and teenagers. They're made for the central Marvel Cinematic Universe audience who will swallow anything that they're given, and they take anything basically. And so I'm not a big fan, and I will say right now that Spider-Man Homecoming and Spider-Man No Way Home are in the bottom of my all-time Spider-Man movies, and my list goes like this, leaving No Way Home out for the time being. But I will say that Raimi's Spider-Man, Spider-Man 2, Spider-Man 3 are my top three, yes, Spider-Man 3's up there, The Amazing Spider-Man and The Amazing Spider-Man 2, that's the order of my list, and then I'd say probably Spider-Man Far From Home and Spider-Man Homecoming. And, you know, if you're forcing me to put Spider-Man into the Spider-Verse, then I would say Raimi's Spider-Man, Raimi's Spider-Man 2, you know, then Spider-Man into the Spider-Verse, then Spider-Man 3, then the rest of the movies I've already listed. I really don't know where to put Spider-Man No Way Home into that list. It's never going to be in my top. It's never going to be above Raimi's first two movies. Forget about it. Spider-Man No Way Home makes a decision after making two very mediocre, underwhelming Spider-Man movies for the Marvel Cinematic Universe and Sony. Oh, I know. Let's use this film to break down the walls of the multiverse. I know. Let's bring in the most successful popular Spider-Man and his rogues gallery. And you know what that basically means? It means they don't actually have to put in any original creative effort. Then they say, I know, let's bring Andrew Garfield in as well. And, you know, bring his villain in as one of his villains in, and, you know, let's give him a little arc. So basically, there's no original work in this film. So I preface this review with that. Now, surprisingly, this film does have a good emotional core to it. And I'll explain what I'm saying there. I love the actual story and what Tom Holland's Peter Parker goes through. And I think that's very important for the whole piece, that there is an emotional arc for the character. I'm not going to spoil anything, but I am going to spoil things in the sense of saying that it ends in a very somber, it's still a little bit uplifting, but it ends in a, you know, what I like in storytelling is character consequences. I don't like characters walking between the raindrops and getting away with them. You know, and I'm talking about principal characters, the hero characters. I don't like them having no consequences. It's like the Superman the movie. I love it. It's my first movie. It's the reason I fell in love with Superman. Lois Lane dies. He goes around the world, goes back in time and brings her back to life. That is a situation where you can actually kill off Lois Lane in a shocking way. There would have been controversy, but there were other people you could have brought in for love interests. There's Lana Lang. You know, there's different characters within the Superman universe, but it would have been a shock. But at least he had consequences for being Superman. And that would have made Superman 2 a more interesting film. You know, this is why it was a shame we never got Amazing Spider-Man 3, because we never saw the consequences of Andrew Garfield's Peter Parker and Spider-Man for losing the love of his life. Now, luckily, so basically, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Yes, this is a spoiler, but as you know, Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, Alfred Molina, and Willem Dafoe are all in this movie, so we can talk about them. I can tell you that William Dafoe's Green Goblin is the best thing about this movie. Think about that for a minute, because William Dafoe is from the Raimi era. That's what I'm saying to you. Everyone's praising this film, saying shit like best movie ever, best Marvel movie ever. It's not for me. It's definitely not. It's not better than Infinity War. It is not better than Captain America, the Winter Soldier, and the accidental good movie, Thor Ragnarok. You know, they're good movies. I mean, I'm not going to say that Thor Ragnarok's better than Spider-Man No Way Home, but I'm just giving you an example of the Marvel movies that I like. So I wouldn't go as far as to say it's the best Marvel movie, but Spider-Man No Way Home it's like watching the highlights of a sporting event. That's what it is. You get some really good moments in this film. It's an entertaining film. And as I say, there is an emotional layer for our main Spider-Man. The other Spider-Men don't steal the show. And of course, this is done purposely. But Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man universe does steal the show. Because we all know, why are you? Comment down below. Why were you excited about Spider-Man No Way Home? And be honest about this. Tom Holland, Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, Alfred Molina, Willem Dafoe, a couple of post-credit scenes. Why were you excited? You were not hyping this movie up because of Tom Holland's Spider-Man and his universe set up in the previous films. You were excited for either Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, or both, or their villains being in this film. So basically, it's better versions of Spider-Man, let's be honest about this, that you were excited about. That's why you bought your ticket early. That's why you woke up in the morning and you thought, where's my ticket? Where's my ticket? This is the biggest event of my life kind of thing. It isn't because of what Feige and the MCU and Marvel Studios have actually built up. So here's the problem with this movie. It isn't, in terms of the quality of the movie, I'm not talking about that. And there are moments in this film where you go, what? That's how the walls of the multiverse break down? Ridiculous. Wait, this character can literally open up wormholes to other universes, and that's how certain characters come in? But how? Why? You know, stupid. This is why I like Jeff Johns' Flashpoint graphic novel. A character who can run very fast, faster than the speed of light if he wants, or as fast as the speed of light, goes back in time and creates an alternate universe. It makes sense. Physically, scientifically, it makes sense. And when he goes back, things are different. Nothing's ever going to be the same again. That's the whole point. It works. But this, they don't really have a good Flashpoint type of story in Marvel comic books. There are some there, but listen, so some of the things in this film are very problematic. But if you can wave them away, you'll enjoy this movie. I think this movie is very entertaining and very enjoyable. The problem for me is that this is just a movie thrown together. You know, it is a fan service movie, but I'm happy to report that it has a good emotional core for Tom Holland's Spider-Man. It's about, really, this film, as all the cameos and appearances and Easter eggs you get, this is a Tom Holland Spider-Man movie. This may be a more Tom Holland Spider-Man movie than the first two. And I do like the ending of the movie. I like that there are consequences for this version of Spider-Man, and going forward, he's not going to have certain things that he's had before. He's going to have to, you know, rely on his own intellect and his own survival instincts. Without me saying anything, I like this now because it's a singular journey. I think we've kind of got lost with superhero TV shows like Arrowverse, who do team this, team that, team the other. You know, in the other Spider-Man movies and this Spider-Man film, No Way Home, he is there with Ned, and he is there with this brand new version of MJ Zendaya. You know, and I think going forward we can get a more singular Spider-Man universe. Holland keeps on talking about moving on from Spider-Man. I don't know if he's pulling our chain because he shot the ending of this movie. He knows there's a new chapter here, and he knows there's going to be more, but it hasn't been officially green-lit. But Sony have said they are planning 3 more movies, and apparently those 3 movies include Tom Holland's Spider-Man. Now, I don't know if they said the 3 movies include him. I do think Holland will be back, first of all, in Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, which is exciting. But I also think they are planning on making an Andrew Garfield movie, and I think the worst kept secret, the elephant in the room, is that you know, Sam Raimi still wants a Spider-Man 4 movie to kind of say, you know, Spider-Man 3 isn't me. You know, Spider-Man 1 and 2 is me. And Spider-Man 4 is me. So I really, really want to see that. And so, yeah. So this film has the usual MCU gags. I don't really like Marvel humour. I think it's shit. It now and again makes me laugh. The action is sensational. The villains are fantastic. You know, because we're dealing with already fleshed out creative villains. Alfred Molina's Doc Ock and Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin were fleshed out beautifully. You know, so that's what I'm saying. It's so easy. You know, because we don't have a Harry, do we? We don't have, you know, a Green Goblin in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. You know, they haven't given these things to us. We don't have, you know, J.K. Simmons, you know, editor-in-chief of the Daily Bugle, Jameson. But he's definitely in this film. That's another spoiler for you. But I ain't spoiling the really, really big things, and I won't. But I will say that there's a good story here. Surprisingly, despite them being lazy and pulling out all these characters and not... Because the MCU doesn't know how to do good villains apart from Thanos and a couple of others. They just don't seem to bring people in with that ability. And maybe purposely so, because they don't want to scare the kids and they don't want to make the movies too dark. I understand it. This is Disney after all. But, you know, the villains of this film are the highlight. And I like Alfred Molina's Doc Ock in this film. You know, because I think it stays true to what the character was. Because Molina's Doc Ock starts off as a good man who wants to help the world. And then it goes wrong and he's controlled. You know, and they go through that narrative. They continue that narrative. And I like that. Now, Norman Osborn is not really a good guy before he becomes Green Goblin. But at least he's still got a part, you know, a soul. You know, he has goals. And, you know, I think, again, this film very cleverly doesn't try and shift anything. One of the things I was scared of, I mentioned this the other day, that with the CW's Crisis on Infinite Earths, they tried to shift the narrative with Tom Welling's Clark Kent from Smallville. And it was wrong. It was wrong to say he's not Superman anymore. You left him in a good place. Why did you do that? Not one person wants to see Tom Welling not being Superman. Even the shills who try and explain it away and defend what they did. It was wrong. Simple. Well, Tobey Maguire's Peter Parker is in a good position, right? Good situation within his story. And, by the way, Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man is in a logical position after what he lost in The Amazing Spider-Man 2. And there's even a beautiful moment that kind of doesn't redeem what he lost, but it fills a little space, a little hole in his heart. So the performances by Tobey and Andrew are beautiful in this film. Basically, everyone's brilliant in this film. The music is epic. So I say mostly this is an entertaining film. The only question mark I put there, that this is just, I mean, the whole thing, for me, this is the biggest blag in Hollywood history. Leak who's in the movie. You know, bring in already established characters. It's easy, isn't it? The Flash movie's doing it next year. But I think the Flash movie has a lot more originality in it from what I'm hearing from my sources than this film does. But when you're bringing in Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, you know, two versions of Spider-Man that are so much more popular than Tom Holland's and will be remembered maybe even longer than Tom Holland's. But Tom Holland's going to be playing Spider-Man in more movies and for longer than the other two. But it's not... In this element, size doesn't matter. Amount doesn't matter. Spider-Man and Spider-Man 2 by Sam Raimi set the benchmark. Superman the movie by Richard Donner and Superman 2 by Richard Lester set the benchmark. Both those two movies are awesome and they're part of comic book movie history and they are untouchable. You can poke holes at Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2. They have basically those films have a cult audience and that's great, a bit like the Snyderverse, but it really is Tobey Maguire's first two Spider-Man movies that are the iconic, legendary ones. And I would absolutely be so happy if Sam Raimi and Tobey and Kirsten came back to do at least one more. And I really want Andrew Garfield to get a third movie to complete his trilogy as well. So I think I'm not so sure we're going to get another Tom Holland trilogy. I think we'll get a Tom Holland movie, we'll get an Andrew Garfield movie, and we'll get a Tobey Maguire movie. I think that would be kind of the best way of doing it. By the way, Miles Morales is done dirty. There's some kind of reference, not to him directly. I didn't like this reference. It's typical extreme left Hollywood. It's not good. It's not inclusive. Because I'm going to give you a little spoiler, right? Go away, about someone who's not in this movie. Are you ready? Have you gone away? Miles Morales isn't in Spider-Man No Way Home. I was hoping he would be. I thought this was the perfect place to have him in it, and that's a shame because we need him. You know, Miles Morales deserves his own movie, not for an off-the-cuff comment, and this is a spoiler as well. I hope there's a black version of Spider-Man in the multiverse or some shit like that. That's shit. Is that all he gets? And you're going to argue with me, yeah, but he's the star of Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Great. But is that all a black Spider-Man is worth? To be in animation? This was a great opportunity, right? For me, Tom Holland has done his trilogy now. They could have even moved away. They could have set up Miles Morales in this movie to be the next MCU, Sony, live-action Spider-Man, and still give Andy and Tobey their movies to kind of finish those stories off. In a way, it was the right time for Tom Holland to finish off and Miles Morales to take over. But for Miles Morales not even to cameo in this film is, for me, it's a missed opportunity, and Miles has been done dirty. And telling me, well, he's represented and included in an animated movie simply isn't good enough, because that animated movie is great. We're getting a sequel. The sequel looks amazing. That's released in 2023. I can't wait to see it. It's all good. I mean, Spider-Man fans are eating well right now. I've been a Spider-Man fan since Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. What a fucking animated classic. That silly Amazing Spider-Man TV series. That wasn't great and wasn't very successful, but it was a chance to see Spidey in live action, wasn't it? But we are eating well at the moment, and that's great. But I think if you're bringing in, if you're virtue signaling constantly, right? If you're Kevin Feige and you're virtue signaling, you have to think to yourself, well, hang on a minute, why haven't I launched a Miles Morales? Well, I'll tell you why, because in this instant, Kevin Feige hasn't got any control in what happens. Well, this is a Sony decision, and Sony are not that bothered in representation and inclusion because of the people that own them. That's not what they're interested in. That's why Spider-Man No Way Home focuses on the entertainment element rather than the representation and inclusion element. And for me, it's refreshing because it works. It's just a fun superhero movie that really bases itself in the format and uses things that people loved about other versions of these characters. Listen, I don't think this is the best Spider-Man movie of all time. I don't think it's the best MCU film. And I would insult every filmmaker from Charlie Chaplin to Buster Keaton if I said Spider-Man No Way Home was the best movie ever. I understand why people say it. They've just come out of the fucking movie. They're buzzing. I get it. Seeing Tobey and Andy was amazing for me as well. So I'm going to give this a 7 out of 10. It's very enjoyable. It's great to see Tobey and Andy again. It was great to see Willem again. It was great to see my old mate Al, by the way. Great man, Alfred Molina. There is a shocking moment. Something happens in this movie that turns Peter Parker into a very dark character and tempts him into actually killing someone. A little bit of a spoiler again, but I'm not telling you what happens to a certain person and what makes him go dark side for a minute. And it's actually one of the other Spider-Men from their experience who convinced Spider-Man not to cross that line. Again, this is a very good moment. So I would say that this is a really good Spider-Man movie, but that doesn't mean I'm going to say it's the bestest ever. And I'm not going to mention the fact that this is really creatively bankrupt to bring in elements from other movies that everybody loved, because then you don't actually have to do anything creatively. In another way, it admits that the people making, Watson, Fagan, everyone making the first two movies are admitting, we don't have a clue how to make great Spider-Man, so let's just bring in the stuff you loved from the other movies. So I get that. But even though I said that already, what I will say is I'm shocked and surprised at Tom Holland's Peter Parker Spider-Man actually having an emotional arc and leaving him in a place where everything is up in the air. I like that, and it really leaves him out there, out there in the cold in a lot of ways, without giving away any more spoilers. And I do apologise because, I should have warned you about a few little spoilers out there, because I saw someone, do a 7-minute review, had a 2-minute review, and then the rest of it was the final No Way Home trailer, which was pathetic. I was very disappointed about that, and I can't believe I gave them a view for that. So, yes, I do like Spider-Man No Way Home, but I was never going to do a video and say, I don't think they're creatively bankrupt for doing this, that and the other, and teasing Toby and Andy. It's easy marketing, isn't it? I was always going to bring that up. But ultimately, it leaves the future of Spider-Man in a really exciting place. And I think if you're a geek or a nerd, or you like the MCU, or you like these type of films, you have a really good time watching this movie. This has been Movies TV Mad. I am Mick, your host with the most. Just ask your girlfriends and your wives. Like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you never miss this perfection. And I'll see you again later on with even more Movies TV Mad. Until then, I'll see you again soon. Goodbye, au revoir, auf Wiedersehen. See you later.